What's up, YouTube? This is Carrie from Side Tripping with Carrie. I know it's been a minute because it certainly has been, but today I'm out at the Valley of the Sun Cemetery and Mortuary here in Chandler, Arizona, and we're going to visit the final resting place of a person that kind of have a tangential kind of relationship, if you want to call it that, or a tangential tie to a fellow who's unfortunately the victim of a brutal murder back in 2002. He was a very well-known kind of local kid made good. His name was Rick Chance, and he was the owner of Empire Glass Company. And if you were around in Phoenix in the late 90s, early 2000s, you would know who he was, because he was ubiquitous on television with his commercials for his glass company. So Charles Rick Chance was, again, kind of a local kid, grew up south of Phoenix in a kind of a farming community back then called Maricopa. It's still there. Maricopa's grown. It's kind of more of a, what do you call it, a bedroom community to Phoenix. You know, a lot of commuters live there now, so the the area's kind of changed a bit. In any event, Rick went to Maricopa High School. Very popular kid, involved in sports. He was the editor of the school newspaper. Seemed like everybody loved this guy, and he's also kind of a really good example of a self-made man. His family was involved in farming in the local area, and he didn't want any part of that. You know, he wanted to make his own way in the world. So, but he worked hard at it. You know, he wasn't one of these type of people to, say he wanted to do something different and then try to look for the easy way out. He worked his butt off. So he wound up being a manager of a glass company down in Tucson. And then he came upon this idea of kind of marrying auto glass repair with free dinners at restaurants. Okay, and just to take a step back, auto windshield repairs in Arizona and here out west in general is a big deal, because if you come out here and you have a car and you drive it for more than about 2 or 3 months, you're going to get a rock that's going to pop up, hit your windshield, and crack it. And you're going to need to get it replaced, or else you're looking at getting a ticket from a police officer at some point. And those dang cracks spread, and I know that from experience. So it's a big business out here. And like I said, Rick came upon this idea of saying, and these were his commercials for Empire Glass. He'd say, "Hey, I'm Rick Chance of Empire Glass, and if you get your windshield replaced by me, you can have a free dinner for two at such and such Mexican restaurant." And like I said, it was ubiquitous. Rick seemed like a genuinely nice guy, and from everything I've read about him, that's exactly what he was. He was a devoted family man. His children loved him to death, and he loved his children, and he loved his family, his brother, his parents. I mean, they're very close-knit. And like I said, the guy had a big heart. But I don't know if you want to call it a weakness, but he had let's call it an issue. He did have an issue with women, okay? He was married 3 times. The first marriage was a relatively short one, kind of 2 years. He was a young dude, married a woman in, I think he met her in Tucson. She was a secretary, and he was bouncing around. I think he might have been a waiter at the time, and he was with her for a couple of years. There's not a whole lot written about what happened. Second marriage, though, seemed to be starting off on the right foot. He was from a kind of a conservative Christian family and met a woman who had those same kind of values, and they had a couple of children, and by all indications, the mother of his kids was a again, a upstanding citizen, very nice. And so he marries her, and but something happened that caused them to get divorced. And what happened was kind of a precursor of what ultimately led to Rick being here today. And that is, he got one of the other things that Rick liked to do, or kind of a passion of his, was jewelry. I mean, he loved like Rolex watches. He loved designing jewelry. And he developed his own designs. He worked with other jewelers. But one of the things that the other jewelers would tell him, they'd say, hey man, you can't take these jewels around with you in this briefcase like you like to do, showing them off. He would just say, hey, I've got these neat rings and necklace designs, you want to check them out, and just pop them open for people that he thought might buy them, I guess. So he did that with a prostitute. He got with some prostitute, and I guess was showing off these jewels, and she drugged him and then stole all of the jewelry. So that happened while he's married to the second wife, and as you can imagine, didn't go over well. So she divorces him. The third wife was, this was just a disaster. He winds up marrying this woman who was a Mrs. Arizona and a Mrs. America. And he marries her on like Good Morning America, like in 1996. And, it was kind of a spectacle. Come to find out, she was Mrs. America, right? So she's supposed to be married. Well, she was separated from her husband at the time. And then after that, and then this is, after he marries her, whatever, the Mrs. America pageant files a lawsuit against her for basically fraud, for, not being married when she said she was being married. Then, after Rick's married to her, she gets sued again by a porno film company that had apparently given her money, and she was supposed to star in like an X-rated movie, which she didn't do. And so they sued her. So it was just a mess. Then their divorce was like super messy. There were court filings where he's calling her a gold digger, and she's calling him like a religious kook. So, it was bad. It was just bad. So he divorces the third wife, and he's single, okay? In 2002, he meets a young woman who she was a dancer and an escort, and her name was Brandi Hungerford. So Brandi's story was, she was from South Korea. She was adopted by a family, then moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan, where she grew up at least part of the time. At some point, she moved to the Phoenix area with her dad, and I think finished up high school and was going to ASU, Arizona State, or planning to go. But then she answers an ad in the newspaper periodical around the valley that says models wanted. And as you can imagine, things that sound too good to be true usually are. Her life just kind of takes this detour into this world of escorting and nude modeling and eventually dancing, being a stripper. So she works at one of the most prestigious or biggest strip clubs in Phoenix, and it was called Christie's Cabaret. And it was it's actually not that far from where I work now. It's got a different name, and to be honest with you, I'm not even sure it's still open I don't know if it's open or not. But back then, that was kind of the place to be, if that's the kind of thing you wanted to do or partake in. So he meets Brandi, and apparently they knew each other for at least a little while. And it's kind of not very clear how long they knew each other, but Eventually, she finds out about him and his jewelry situation. He tells her about it. I guess she tells him that, you know, she's interested and knows a person that's interested in purchasing the jewelry and would love to see it. So they set up this kind of like meeting thing at this hotel in Tempe, actually not that far from ASU. So she goes there, Brandi does, and it's a total setup. Unbeknownst to Rick, she's got this guy who was her boyfriend, and he was this dude named Robert Lemke. And Lemke, tall, good-looking guy. I mean, I'm going to show you a picture, put it up there. The guy looks like he could be like a starting tight end for the New York Giants or something. You know, all-American boy kind of look, tall, muscular, and, you know, but the guy was just a bad dude. I mean, he had a record a mile long. He was from Tacoma, Washington. He had a felony warrant at the time. So that means the police in Washington were looking for him. And he makes it down here to Arizona. Now, weirdly enough, and this is kind of where my tie-in comes in. Weirdly enough, he is a model, or I'm sorry, he is a dancer too. And he was kind of in that world of dancing and, you know, stripper, fast money type deal. Plus, like I said, the guy, he had a violent streak as well, all right? So the setup is at the hotel, and there's video of it. There's actual video of Rick and Brandi checking into the hotel. And, you know, like I said, unbeknownst, they go into the room, and then Brandi like opens up the door, and then Robert goes in there, and then she's like kind of, I guess, the lookout or something like that. So he gets shot. Rick gets shot one time and dies. All right. They go on the run. They go back to their place where they were living and pick up some stuff, and then they take off and go to Tacoma, Washington. And this is, like I said, this is where the tie-in comes in. The reason I know this is what they did was I represented a witness in Lemke's murder trial. She was a roommate of Lemke's. I think it was her, and if I remember correctly, she was a roommate and another girl was a roommate. Brandi didn't live with Lemke, but I guess she was always over there. But my client testified at his trial, and her testimony wasn't long, but the prosecutor needed her to kind of set up the demeanor. Like, what did they look like when they came home that day? Oh, they were, you know, they looked, you know, white as sheets, you know, like something had happened and they were in a rush to grab clothes, and then they took off. Did they tell you where they were going? No, you know. So that was kind of my tie-in. Eventually, they were both busted in Tacoma. They were extradited back to Arizona. If I remember correctly, I think Lemke tried to fight extradition because he had pending stuff in Washington. So he tried to kind of parlay that into keeping him there. But state of Washington correctly said, you know what, nah, you got bigger fish to fry in Arizona. Arizona, come and get him. And that's what they did. So he goes to trial. Brandi cops a deal. She agreed to testify against Lemke, which she did. And believe it or not, they got a hung jury on the murder count. He was charged with theft because he stole the jewelry. He stole a Rolex off of Rick Chance. And he was also charged with conspiracy to murder. So he gets convicted of both of those at trial. But somebody hung, a juror held out on the murder count, which was surprising. And I guess the theory was, believe it or not, oh no, he didn't shoot Rick Chance, Brandi did. And, you know, there was no physical evidence of that really happening, but somebody on the jury bought the argument, and they got a hung jury on the murder count. So the case goes on, and they're gonna retry him. They're not gonna let it go. And he wisely decides to cop a deal, and Lemke gets 25 years to life with the possibility of parole. But he was also convicted on that theft count of the Rolex, and because of his priors and because of the cost of the Rolex, or the value, I should say, it was significant. It was like 20 something years. And what I can't find, and I apologize for this, I wanted to find out, I wanted to look at the minute entry of his sentencing to see exactly how much time he got on the theft count, and whether it ran consecutive or concurrent to his 25-year to life sentence. And I think it ran concurrent, but it was more time than 25 years. So needless to say, he's still in prison, and he just has the chance of parole after 25, and that's day for day. But before he can even get there, he's got to finish that other sentence. So if it's more than 25 years, it's like he's got to do that first before he can even attempt to get parole. And Lemke, good luck with that, bro. You're gonna need it, because they don't often parole people, for those kind of crimes, especially if the person, isn't like a model prisoner. And I don't believe Lemke was or is. I can be corrected. If I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments. But if I were a betting man, I wouldn't bet on him getting out anytime soon. Brandi Hungerford, on the other hand, was released in 2016. So she is out. She got 14 years for her part. And again, it's a shame what happened to Mr. Chance. I mean, again, he seemed like just a really nice guy, type of guy I would have loved to have met and had a beer with, and shot the breeze with. But it wasn't to be. Here is his final resting place. Born on August 1st, 1958, and passed away August 9th, 2002. And it says, in loving memory, alive in Christ, Charles Richard Chance, then Rick. And it says, beloved father, son, and brother. And his parents actually are interred right there. He did outlive his father, but his mother outlived him. So that's gonna wrap it up for me, folks. Again, I know it's been a while. Good news is, looks like the weather's breaking at least a little bit. It's cooler than it was, still not quite where it needs to be. So I've got some ideas for some other videos here coming up soon. If you like today's video, please give it a like. Also consider subscribing. I am very, very close to that 500 level mark, where I can start doing shorts and things like that. So any help would be appreciated. Spread the video around, spread the channel around. Take a look around at the other videos if it's your first time. All right, so until the next time, I guess I will see you later, and you guys take care. Bye-bye.